What's up, you guys? This is Devin with CenturyFX Studios, back with another video. And today we're going to be talking about picture selection, the whole selection process for taking your pictures and putting them in the Lightroom and then selecting which ones you want. Because technically, you tend to select while you're actually going through the pictures and taking them as well. So you want to think about the pictures as you're taking them, which ones are yeses and which ones are nos. But I'm going through the images, and when I start to get my exposure on my subject correct, then I start to think about the background, things of that nature. So you'll notice that some of these images, like, they're a little bit darker than usual. Well, yeah, I underexpose about a third or 2/3 of a stop underexposed, because when the sun comes up, I know my exposure is going to radically change. We went out there doing golden hour, and so this golden hour is going to present a big challenge for me. Now you can see the sun is starting to rise, and then you see some color start to come back into it. And this is one of the images that I chose. That's why it looks a little bit more polished. But you can see the ones I chose versus the ones I didn't. But I'll get to the ones I chose in depth in just a second. And now you see me taking pictures, and you're like, these pictures look a little dry. Like I said, they're raw, and they're about a third of a stop underexposed, maybe 2/3 of a stop underexposed, as you can see from the histogram off to your upper right hand corner. There's no need for me to lie, but it tells you what images, what lenses, and all the attributes: the shutter speed, aperture, ISO. So you don't have to ask me that in the comments. A lot of people ask me, well, what were the settings that you use to get these images? Well, it's right there. So as I scroll through, for those of you who have never used Lightroom before, it tells you the settings and things of that nature. Now you can see that her face is very very bright, maybe on a little bit of a pale side. So you'll notice that I'm struggling with exposure from one spot to the next, So I'm really trying to keep my camera underexposed so I don't blow the tonal and texture of her face. And you can see how I manage that throughout these images. And you can see some of my edits that I did, because you can see all the images. And then when the sun really came out, I started to readjust my camera. You can see here I readjusted my camera and just really accounted for not only the background but her face, which is the brightest part of the image based off of her skin tone, complexion, and color. So you don't want to lose those things. So you want to get them as accurate as possible. The light modifier that I was using was the Glow Easy Lock 38-inch parabolic umbrella. And you see me just testing out different perspectives and things of that nature, different images, different styles, different orientations of the camera. And there was one missed trigger right here, but as you can see, we got the trigger back right. And doing some other things with perspective, changing lenses. I go from the 50 to the 85 1.8 to the 90mm macro from Tamron, which I think is probably one of the most sharpest lenses on the planet. I'm going to do another video on that soon. All right, so you can notice that I chose this one. I like the pose. It was simple. It was simplistic. It had this fashion feel because of her purse. And she wanted to show that off. It wasn't so much about the pose. The pose wasn't overbearing to the point where it wasn't showing off the actual prop there, which is the pocketbook. So I thought that was great. And then I just did some leveling in post, which I will do in series with images that are essentially in the same environment, taken at the same perspective, things of that nature. So the same thing here. The only thing I did, and I'll go to the develop module so you can see some of the attributes that I added to the image. As far as exposure, I didn't do a lot to the exposure here. And is this a TIFF file? So you can't really tell exactly what I did to the exposure. But the exposure, let's see, I can't get to the original file right now. I want to save time. But if I go to another image, I'll show you the original exposure, so you won't think, oh my goodness, it's 3 stops underexposed. No, it's not that far off. It's about 2/3 of a stop underexposed, somewhere around that ballpark, because I kept moving the light around. But at the end of the day, here's some of the images that I chose. The same concept with this book bag, or not book bag, but pocketbook. I don't wear them. I just call them stuff. But that's another one right there, where I think the bag really was pronounced more than the pose, and I probably would have wanted her to bring her hand up and around so I could see it, but that left arm there. But yep, I really like this one. This had a lot of contrast. She had a lot of different outfits or coats on, and you were able to see them as layers as they sculpted her face or the mask of her face. And since the background is muted, it doesn't have as many tones, but her face has so much contrast with the outfit that she has on that I wanted to bring more of attention to her face than the background, because the background doesn't really have too many tones. Most of them are just that same green tone. As you can see, when you change something to black and white, you really only see the tone more so than the actual object itself. Especially if it's really, really dark, like these trees in the background. So since they didn't have too many, fall tones, because it's technically fall bordering onto winter right now, this is, on Black Friday, you don't have as many browns on this side, greens and stuff like that, but you do have them on the other side of the field. So you'll see me incorporate that color a little bit later, the fall colors. And that's really what this is about. This is more like a wintry fall kind of concept, kind of using those colors that the fashionistas use, to highlight the well, pretty much everybody really, but to highlight the season, something seasonal, to get somebody a feel of the real reality of today. I know on Instagram I see a lot of people with a whole bunch of bathing suits, and it's not even that time of year for most people. And they go to another side of the country to visit, and they're like, oh yeah, I'm wearing my bathing suit when everybody's stuck in the snow. So I want some reality so people can relate to the images that I post on Instagram. So now you can see some more of those fall colors in the background. Again, now you can see a little bit more color from the subject as well. But her contrast is really, really poppy from the background, which is a little bit more muted, even though you can see those colors. Again, we're using the 85 1.8, blurring that background out. You can see that same perspective as far as color muted in the background to her very, very popish, blackish contrast. And then, so we got a couple of going on here. They're all kind of the same. All right, so now we get to a different outfit. Now, this different outfit came around the time that the sun really, really peaked over the clouds, and you can really see those golden tones and things of that nature. So you can see my histogram and see how my colors lie as far as how they were exposed, where they were exposed, and what are the limitations of those colors. Because a lot of people are like, is this color overexposed versus this color, or is this exposure overexposed? In reference to what the histogram says. So you can see my histogram. And these are tips because I took them into Photoshop. Maybe did some retouching on the face. Maybe did some changing of the hair as far as pulling away those stragglies. But yeah, and you can see, and this is a fashion near and dear to her heart, because it was it's like a love thing. So I kind of gave it a pass based off of what and she said she knew it was kind of stretching, but I gave it a pass based off of what it meant. So it's more of a sentimental value, but I still like the outfit in a sentimental type of way. But of course, she has these dazzling features, very etched face. I love this. It's gorgeous for beauty shots because she has so much symmetry in her face. So when I use something like this 90mm macro, which is one I think the sharpest lenses on the planet, really, especially on a full frame sensor, you can really see those features. And so that's why I chose some of these images right here. I love this little Dutch tilt. I know a lot of people don't like it. If I can come up with a real good reason, then I will use those frames, those techniques, because of how I feel. If I can prove it to myself. And use some of the photography concept, leading lines, things of that nature, bokeh, lining up the image, having a good background and foreground. So like I always say, don't just blur out the background, but have something interesting in the background, things of that nature. And Canon colors are always gorgeous. So this is the shoot. These are why I selected some of these images. I also took away some images that were out of focus, things of that nature that I don't care to really show you right now. But the ones that were really, really out of focus, I just was like, no, I can't do this. Can't do that. Can't do this. Can't do that. Or if the framing was off or the flash didn't flash, those are automatics. No. I think that's kind of common sense for most photographers. But at the end of the day, we want to make sure that we have something that can really pop. So if that means you have to take 300 images and only go with 20 or 30, then that might be what you have to do, because you don't want to bore the person. It's like It's like you're watching a $1 million movie, and then someone just keeps doing the same exact scene. I was like, oh, this scene is good. Let me just recreate it, and then eventually it gets boring. So you always want to show a little bit of diversity in your picture selection, not just in your portfolio, but your picture selection in general for every album that you do, from weddings to small shoots. I'm done with CenturyFX Studios. I hope this helps your selection process. Let me know if you got any questions, and I'll do another video to try to help everybody out. Keep watching the videos, guys.